My friends, there comes a moment in the life of every earnest seeker when the world, just as it has been, no longer satisfies. Not because something external has changed, not because people have failed you or circumstances have grown darker, but because a deeper rhythm has begun within you and the outer world cannot drown it out any longer. You did not choose this moment. You did not plan for it. In fact, if you could have delayed it, you might have. But the spiritual life is not lived by human will. It is lived by the stirring of the presence at the center of your being. When the kingdom of God begins to make itself known within, the old pleasures lose their flavor. The old conversations lose their sparkle. And the old identity, with all its props and performances, begins to feel strangely foreign. You may look around and wonder why everything that once felt natural now feels distant, why the very environments that shaped your personality no longer offer comfort. And if you misunderstand this phase, you may believe something has gone wrong. But nothing has gone wrong. The truth is that something has gone wonderfully right. You see, when the divine presence reveals itself, even faintly, it draws you inward. It loosens your grip on the material sense of life. It removes the noise you once mistook for companionship, the excitement you mistook for purpose, the stimulation you mistook for joy, and suddenly there is a silence, not an empty silence, but a living silence through which the voice of spirit may be heard. But here is the part that causes confusion. When this inner shift occurs, the outer world appears to fall away, not because you are being punished, and not because you have failed, but because your consciousness has outgrown its former boundaries. The people who once understood you now struggle to recognize the person you are becoming. The spaces that once held you cannot contain the consciousness that is unfolding within you. And so you find yourself on what seems like a solitary path, yet I say to you, this solitude is not abandonment, it is initiation. It is not loneliness, it is preparation. You are not being separated from the world, you are being separated from illusion, so that you may see the world as it truly is. You are being led away from the outer shadows, so you may discover the light that has always lived at the center of your own being. And so, when you feel the world slipping from your hands, do not cling. When the old companionships dissolve, do not mourn. Something far greater is approaching. The stillness that unnerves you at first will soon become your sanctuary. The silence that feels empty will soon reveal itself as fullness, and the path that appears lonely will soon be recognized as the path of the presence, drawing you step by gentle step into the realization that you walk with God and have been walking with God always. This, my friends, is the beginning of the journey we are speaking about tonight, the moment when the soul begins to remember itself and the world no longer fits the one who has begun to awaken. Let us go deeper, because the moment you begin to sense this inner turning, the mind immediately asks, why is this happening? Why do I feel myself withdrawing from the life I once enjoyed? And I say to you, you are not withdrawing from life. You are withdrawing from a false sense of life, a life lived externally, dependently, fearfully, seeking satisfaction in that which can never offer it. When consciousness expands, the forms that once held meaning cannot hold you any longer. It is not that you have lost interest in the world. It is that the world of appearances, the world built on fear, competition, approval, and personal will, is too small for the awareness now stirring within you. You are beginning to live not from personality, but from presence. And the presence has no interest in the roles you once performed, the masks you once wore, or the games you once played. Goldsmith said often that spiritual growth is a change of consciousness, and where consciousness goes, life must follow. And so, as consciousness rises, it rises out of the beliefs, the habits, the patterns that belong to the old level of awareness. You cannot carry them with you any more than the butterfly can carry the cocoon. The cocoon was necessary for a time. It provided structure, safety, identity. But once transformation begins, the very thing that protected you becomes too limiting for what you are becoming. And so the friendships that were built upon shared fear, shared gossip, shared ambition begin to loosen. The activities that once entertained you now feel insubstantial. The goals that once fueled your days no longer speak to you. It is not because the world has changed, but because your center of gravity has shifted. You are no longer trying to get something out of life. You are beginning to sense life living itself through you. You are no longer seeking validation from people. You are beginning to feel the quiet sufficiency of the presence within. You are no longer trying to make things happen by effort. You are beginning to trust the rhythm of grace. And the moment this movement begins within you, everything that cannot resonate with this higher rhythm falls away, not by force, not by decision, simply by the law of consciousness. For two levels of awareness cannot occupy the same space. The higher must lift you, the lower must dissolve. If you resist this change, you will suffer, because you will try to live in two worlds, the world of spirit and the world of appearances. But once the inner call has sounded, once the presence has touched you even lightly, there is no going back to the life built on fear, control, and dependence. The old world cannot hold the one who has glimpsed the infinite. And that is why it feels as if life is pulling you inward, because it is. You are being invited into a new dimension of life, a deeper sense of self, a truer foundation of being. And what appears as the loss of the past is, in truth, the opening to a reality that has always been here, awaiting your recognition. Nothing is being taken from you. Only the unreal is falling away. Only the temporary is dissolving. Only the false is passing. What remains the presence, the silence, the Christ within is the only part of you that has ever been real. And this, my friends, is why your old world cannot hold your new consciousness. The truth in you has begun to awaken, and the truth cannot live comfortably in a life built upon illusion. Now, let us turn to one of the most misunderstood stages of the spiritual life, a stage every mystic, every prophet, every seeker of truth must pass through. I speak of that inner wilderness, that desert experience, when the world seems to fall silent, and every outer support you once relied upon appears to vanish. This is the phase where your heart says, I have nothing left to hold on to, and spirit quietly responds, yes, now you are ready. My friends, no one enters this desert willingly. It is not glamorous. It is not dramatic. It is not filled with visions and revelations. It is filled with something far more sacred, the stripping away of all false dependencies. In this desert, the people who once comforted you feel distant. The activities that once entertained you offer no joy. The ambitions that once drove you now feel meaningless. And even the spiritual practices that once uplifted you seem to fall flat. It is as if life has emptied itself. But I assure you, it is not life that is emptied, it is your consciousness that is being cleared. Goldsmith often said that the desert is not a place of absence, but a place of purification. Everything you depended upon in the outer world, every crutch, every distraction, every source of false security is removed, not to punish you, but to reveal the only presence that truly sustains you. This desert is holy. This emptiness is sacred. This silence is the beginning of vision. For in the desert, you cannot lean on the world. You cannot lean on the mind. You cannot lean on the senses. You are left with only one thing, the inner presence that has been there all along, waiting for the noise to quiet so it may speak. You may cry out, "Why has God abandoned me?" But the truth is the opposite. God is nearer in this phase than at any other. Only now, with every distraction removed, can you feel the nearness. Here is the paradox. In the desert, you feel most alone, yet you are closest to God. In the silence, you feel most empty, yet you are being filled. In the darkness, you feel most blind, yet your spiritual sight is being opened. Every mystic walked through this silence. Jesus in the wilderness, Moses on the mountain, Elijah under the juniper tree, and Goldsmith himself spoke of long seasons where the inner guidance seemed to retreat so that the soul could learn the difference between emotional comfort and spiritual self-sufficiency. Understand this. What you call loneliness is the death of the old self. What you call emptiness is the clearing of old beliefs. What you call abandonment is the dissolving of the ego's dependence on externals. And when there is nothing left to cling to, nothing left to protect, nothing left to perform, then, and only then, do you begin to sense a new foundation rising within, a stillness that is not loneliness, a peace that is not emotional, a presence that is not imagined. This is the purpose of the desert, to remove everything except God, so that you may discover that God was everything all along. You are not lost. You are being led. You are not abandoned. You are being deepened. You are not punished. You are being prepared for the next stage of spiritual life, where the presence becomes your anchor, your identity, and your quiet companion. And when you emerge from this desert, and you will know a truth that cannot be taught, cannot be read, cannot be given by any teacher. God is enough, and in God, you are whole. As we continue along this path, we must speak of another phase that every seeker encounters, yet few understand. The quiet distance that grows between you and those you love. And I say to you lovingly, this too is part of the spiritual life. For when consciousness begins to rise, the old relationships built upon the personality, upon shared history, upon familiar patterns, cannot always rise with it. Your family, your friends, your companions of many years, they look at you through the lens of who you have been, not who you are becoming. They hear your words, but they do not hear the shift in consciousness from which those words arise. They feel the change in your energy, yet they interpret it through their own fears, their own expectations, their own memories of you. And so they say, you're different, without understanding what that means. They say, you're distant, without realizing that you are not pulling away, you are awakening within. If you meet this phase with fear, you will try to explain yourself, to justify your transformation, to reassure others that you are still the same. But my friends, you are not the same. Consciousness cannot expand and remain what it was. And so the attempt to drag your new awareness into the old framework creates suffering for all involved. Goldsmith warned students repeatedly, do not expect your awakening to be recognized, approved, or understood by those who have not yet touched this inner dimension. How could they? They have not seen what you have seen. They have not felt what you have felt. They have not tasted the silence that has become your sustenance. Their misunderstanding is not a reflection of your path, nor is it a judgment upon your progress. It is simply a fact of consciousness. Two levels of awareness cannot perceive each other clearly. You see from the mountain, they see from the valley. You speak of light, they hear only concepts. You are learning to trust the inner presence. They trust the visible world. And so the communication is strained, not because anyone is wrong, but because you are now living from a different dimension of being. Here is the great temptation: to force understanding, to correct their perception, to defend your path, to make them feel comfortable with what is unfolding in you. Resist this temptation gently, for when you try to make others understand what they have not yet awakened to, you burden yourself and frustrate them. What, then, should you do? Goldsmith's answer was simple and eternal: recognize the Christ in them, even when they cannot recognize it in themselves, even when they cannot see it in you. You do not explain your awakening, you live it. You do not convert them, you bless them. You do not justify your inner journey, you honor theirs. And you understand that the same presence that has awakened in you lives equally in them, awaiting its own moment of unfolding. Their misunderstanding is temporary. The truth within them is eternal. You will find, as you continue, that some people will drift away naturally. Do not resist. Others will draw closer, drawn not to your words, but to the peace you carry. Do not cling. Let relationships reorganize themselves according to the harmony of spiritual law, not according to human desire. For when you see others through spiritual vision, seeing the Christ instead of the personality, the light instead of the behavior, then even those who misunderstand you become instruments of your awakening. And with time, you will discover that the true companionship you seek does not come through convincing anyone of anything. It comes through abiding in the presence and allowing that presence to reveal the true relationship between you and all of God's children. For we are not separate beings trying to understand one another. We are one life, one light, one consciousness, appearing as many. And when you see that, misunderstanding dissolves not always outwardly, but inwardly, where it matters. Now, we come to a turning point on the spiritual path, one that almost always occurs quietly, without announcement, but marks a profound inner transformation. It is the shift from living as a personality to living as presence. And if you understand this shift, even in a small measure, you will understand why your life no longer fits into its old outlines, why the world feels as though it is rearranging itself, and why your very sense of self feels unfamiliar. The personality, my friends, is nothing more than a bundle of memories, habits, fears, conditioning, and borrowed beliefs. It is the accumulation of everything the world has taught you to be. It is the mask you learn to wear to survive, to be acceptable, to belong. But it is not your identity. It is not yourself. It is not the life that animates you. When the spiritual path begins to deepen, the personality does not disappear at once. It fades. It loosens. It becomes transparent. You find yourself less interested in defending opinions, less attached to being right, less reactive to criticism, less entangled in praise. The drama of life loses its magnetic pull, and in the quiet that remains, you discover something astonishing. You can observe your personality, which means you are not it. You begin to witness your thoughts instead of being driven by them. You begin to sense your emotions without being consumed by them. You begin to watch your reactions instead of identifying with them. This is the beginning of liberation. Goldsmith often spoke of this process as the dissolution of the personal sense of self. And many students feared this, believing that without the personality, they would become empty, passive, or vague. But the opposite is true. When the personality fades, what emerges is a deeper, stronger, freer, more luminous sense of being what Goldsmith called the Christ in you, the true identity. This identity does not need validation. It does not fear rejection. It does not compare, compete, or grasp. It is whole in itself. It rests in its own completeness. And the moment you begin to taste this inner completeness, you will feel the shift occurring. You will notice that the motivations that ruled your life for years, fear, insecurity, desire, ambition, no longer have power over you. They may still arise, but they arise like waves on the surface of a vast, still ocean. And you begin to live from the ocean, not the waves. This shift is subtle, but its effects are profound. You speak less, but your words carry more substance. You act less from impulse and more from inner guidance. You stop trying to force outcomes and instead allow them to unfold. You feel a quiet detachment, not from life, but from illusion. And because you are no longer living from the personality, you no longer cling to the outer world to give you a sense of identity. The old self that hungered for attention loses its appetite. The old self that felt threatened by change loses its fear. The old self that believed it had to control life loses its grip. This is why the world cannot understand you now. They are speaking to the personality that is dissolving while you are listening from the presence that is emerging. They look for the old you, the reactive you, the fearful you, the striving you, but that person is no longer at the center. Something deeper is there now, something quieter, something infinitely more real. And if you wish to know how to cooperate with this shift, Goldsmith's instruction is always the same. Do not cling to the personality as it dissolves. Do not mourn its passing. Do not try to resurrect what grace is removing. Instead, turn gently toward the silence within. Rest in that inner stillness. Let the presence live your life. For the more you identify with the Christ within, the less the personality can bind you. And when the personality no longer governs your life, you will discover a freedom that no worldly success could ever offer. A freedom born not of doing, but of being, not of effort, but of awareness. This is the shift from personality to presence. And once it begins, nothing in your life will ever be the same again. And so, my friends, once the personality begins to fade and the presence begins to take its rightful place at the center of your being, you will find yourself entering another stage of the path, one that many resist, yet one that is absolutely essential for spiritual maturity. It is the period of profound solitude, not simply being alone, which is a matter of circumstance, but feeling alone, which is a matter of consciousness. This solitude is not imposed upon you by the world. It arises from within as a natural consequence of awakening, and if you do not understand its purpose, you will fear it. But if you understand it through spiritual vision, you will embrace it as a sacred gift. You see, as long as we rely upon outer companionship to distract us, outer noise to comfort us, outer relationships to validate us, we cannot hear the still, small voice within. And so there comes a time when spirit draws us inward, folds our outer life gently into silence, and invites us to discover the only true companionship we have ever known, the companionship of the presence. In this phase, Goldsmith said, the soul learns to walk without human crutches. It learns to rest in God without needing human support. It learns to abide in the inner light even when no outer light appears. And the remarkable thing is that at first this feels like loss, but soon it becomes liberation. Now, how do we walk through this solitude without fear, without resistance, without imagining we have fallen into some spiritual error? The answer is not in doing more, but in yielding more. Let us look at how, first, turn within gently, not with effort, not with strain, not with the desire to produce some spiritual experience. Simply turn your attention inward. Even for a moment, even for a breath, acknowledge the presence, not as something to be summoned, but as something that is already here, already alive, already closer than your very breathing. Second, withdraw attention from appearances. Loneliness is not a spiritual reality. It is an appearance. It is a mental habit, a belief rooted in separation. But you are not separate from God, and therefore you cannot be separate from the life of God that flows through all creation. So do not argue with loneliness. Do not resist it. Simply refuse to grant it spiritual authority. Rest in the awareness that the feeling is temporary, but the presence is eternal. Third, practice the presence in small moments, a few seconds here, a quiet pause there. Spiritual progress is not measured in hours spent in meditation, but in the sincerity of your turning. A minute of true recognition outweighs an hour of mechanical prayer. The desert does not demand long spiritual labor. It invites simple, sincere awareness. Fourth, let relationships reorganize themselves by grace. Do not cling to those who drift away. Do not chase after those who misunderstand you. Do not mourn the shifting of your social world. As your consciousness rises, it draws to you those who are aligned with your inner vibration, and it releases those who are not. Let this process unfold naturally. The presence is arranging your relationships according to spiritual harmony. Fifth, and perhaps the most important, allow grace to fill the inner space that people once occupied. This is the moment when solitude ceases to feel like emptiness and becomes fullness. When it ceases to feel like isolation and becomes communion. When it ceases to feel like loss and becomes restoration. For in that silence, you will sense the living companionship of God, not as a belief, not as a thought, but as the subtle, warm, unmistakable awareness of being with you, as you, in you. And when you taste this companionship, even faintly, you will understand why this phase is necessary. You will understand why the world had to fall silent. You will understand why the path narrowed for a time. It narrowed so that you could discover that you do not walk this road alone. You walk with the infinite. You walk with the presence. You walk with the only companion who has never left you, not for a single moment. Walk through solitude gently, my friends. Do not fight it. Do not fear it. Do not try to escape it. It is the womb of spiritual birth, the chamber of transformation, the holy ground on which the personal self dissolves and the Christ within takes form. Accept it, rest in it, trust it, and solitude will reveal itself not as emptiness, but as the quiet doorway into everything your heart has ever sought. And now we come to a beautiful unfolding, one that cannot be hurried, cannot be forced, cannot be manufactured by human will. It is the emergence of true companionship, the appearance of those individuals who are drawn not to your personality, not to your history, not to your needs, but to the consciousness that now radiates quietly and steadily from within you. When you have walked through the desert, when you have rested in solitude, when the personality has dissolved and presence has taken its rightful place, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. The world that once felt empty begins to replenish itself, not through noise, not through crowds, but through the arrival of a few souls whose inner light resonates with your own. Goldsmith often reminded his students that companionship on the spiritual path is a matter of consciousness, not numbers. One person who recognizes the presence within is more valuable than 1,000 who cling to the illusions of the personal sense. True companionship is not many, it is few. but those few bring with them a quality of harmony that is far richer than all the social circles you once depended on. These individuals may appear suddenly, or they may emerge gradually from the periphery of your life. They may not share your background, your beliefs, or your outer interests, but they share something far deeper, an attunement to the same inner presence. You may find that with them, words are fewer, yet understanding is greater. Activities are simpler, yet joy is fuller. The relationship is quieter, yet the sense of connection is deeper. How do these people arrive? They arrive by the law of consciousness. When you no longer seek companionship from a place of emptiness, you naturally attract companionship from a place of completeness. When you no longer need others to validate you, you draw those who recognize you. When you no longer look outward for identity, you meet those who live inwardly from the same awareness. It is never your responsibility to seek these people. Seeking belongs to the personal sense. Recognition belongs to the spiritual sense. The right companions appear not when you go looking for them, but when your consciousness becomes a resting place for peace, for stillness, for inner truth. For just as the fragrance of a flower attracts the bee without trying, so the fragrance of awakened consciousness draws those who are meant to walk beside you. This is why, after awakening, you will find that relationships become fewer but deeper, quieter but more meaningful. You may have had many acquaintances before, but now you have a handful of true companions, individuals who see not your role, but your reality, not your personality, but your presence. And let us be clear, these new relationships do not arise to replace old ones. They arise because your consciousness has risen to a new plane, and harmony always expresses itself on the level of consciousness you have attained. As you enter that higher plane, those who resonate with that plane will naturally be drawn to you, just as those who cannot remain will naturally drift away. There is no loss here. There is only alignment. There is only harmony expressing itself. There is only the unfolding of spiritual companionship. And here is a secret. Once you taste companionship born of presence, you will never again be satisfied with relationships built upon personality. Because true companionship, spiritual companionship, is not two people meeting one another. It is two expressions of the same consciousness recognizing themselves in each other. This is why Goldsmith spoke of spiritual community, not as an organization, not as a group with outer unity, but as an invisible fellowship, a circle formed not by human arrangement, but by the inner recognition of the Christ in one another. This is companionship beyond time, beyond distance, beyond personality. It is companionship rooted in God. So when the right people begin appearing in your life, receive them gently, not with excitement, not with attachment, but with quiet gratitude, for they have been sent by the same presence that guided you through the desert, the same presence that revealed itself in solitude, the same presence that is now demonstrating its harmony through your relationships. And remember this truth: you do not need many companions on this path. You need only those who walk with you in the light, and they will come not by your seeking, but by your becoming. Now, my friends, we come to a sacred truth, one that is easily overlooked, yet stands at the very heart of the spiritual life. It is the recognition that awakening is not for you alone. It is not given merely for personal peace, personal healing, personal enlightenment. No. Awakening is the way in which the infinite reveals itself through individual consciousness, that the world may be lifted by the silent radiance of one who knows the presence. Goldsmith taught that the moment a person touches the Christ within, even lightly, that person becomes a point of spiritual illumination in the world. Not by preaching, not by teaching, not by correcting anyone, simply by being, in the material sense of life, Service is action, doing something, changing something, fixing something. But in the spiritual sense, service is being. Service is the degree to which you live from the inner presence rather than the outer personality. Service is the measure of your realization that God is the only life, the only law, the only power. As your consciousness expands, your very presence becomes a healing influence. You may sit quietly in your home, but the atmosphere around you is changed. You may speak few words, but those words carry harmony. You may walk into a room, and without a single action, the tension dissolves, the atmosphere lifts, the hearts of others grow calmer. How is this possible? Because consciousness is the true substance of life. And when your consciousness is resting in the presence, it radiates effortlessly, silently, universally. This is why the mystics could heal without touching, uplift without speaking, and bless without being known. It was not their personality doing these things, it was the presence expressing through their clear awareness. And so, when you emerge from solitude with this deeper anchoring in the Christ within, life gives you a new kind of work, not outer work, but inner service. You become a transparency for God. You become an instrument through which harmony flows. You become a window through which the light reaches others who are still walking in the shadows of fear, separation, and self-importance. This service does not require organization. It does not require publicity. It does not require titles or roles. It requires only one thing, that you live from the center of your being where God is. In every interaction, you hold to the recognition that the same presence within you lives within every individual you meet. You look past their conduct, past their opinions, past their fears, and you behold their true identity. And because you see them truly, something in them begins to awaken, even if they are unaware of why they feel drawn to you, why they feel safe with you, why they feel at peace in your presence. This is the quiet ministry of the awakened soul. This is the silent service Goldsmith spoke of. This is how one individual, living in the realization of oneness, becomes a blessing to the world. And do not mistake this for effort. You do not go about trying to help, trying to heal, trying to uplift. You simply abide in the presence, and the presence does the work. The branch does not strain to bear fruit. It bears fruit because the life of the vine flows through it, so it is with you. This is why the awakened soul appears calm while others are agitated, why they appear steady when others are shaken, why they appear clear when others are confused, because their stability comes not from the outer world, but from the unchanging presence that governs all life. Do not underestimate the power of a single awakened consciousness. Goldsmith often said that one individual who truly knows the truth becomes a sanctuary to many. They become, without declaration, a spiritual refuge for those who are weary. And the more you rest in the presence, the more your very existence becomes a quiet channel of love, a beacon of peace, a point of healing in a world that hungers for both. And so you see, awakening is not an escape from the world. It is the way God enters the world through you. Your inner transformation is not separate from the world. It lifts the world. The degree to which you live from the Christ within is the degree to which the world around you is touched, softened, blessed, harmonized. This is your true service. This is your true purpose. This is the divine activity that begins the moment you surrender the personal self and allow the infinite to live your life. And now, as we come to the close of this journey together, let us look back with spiritual eyes and recognize what has truly been happening in your life. For many of you, this path has felt lonely. It has felt uncertain. It has felt as if everything familiar was stripped away, as if life itself withdrew from you, leaving you to walk through silence, through confusion, through deep inner change. But I say to you now, with all the authority of spiritual vision, you were never abandoned, never forgotten, never left to struggle alone. You were being prepared. The people who drifted away, the structures that collapsed, the identities that dissolved, the roles that no longer fit, the silence that replaced the noise of your former life. All of this was preparation. All of this was grace, removing what could not travel with you into the higher dimension of consciousness you were entering. The desert was not punishment. It was purification. The solitude was not emptiness. It was reorientation. The loss of the old self was not destruction. It was revelation. You were not being diminished. You were being refined. Every misunderstanding you endured, every moment of inner doubt, every withdrawal of outer support, these were the gentle, precise movements of the infinite, guiding you away from dependency on the world and toward reliance on the presence within you. Goldsmith often said, when you feel most alone, God is nearest. Not nearest in distance, but nearest in your awareness. For solitude is the womb in which spiritual identity is born. And now you can see what was unfolding all along. You were being moved from personality to presence, from seeking outside to recognizing within, from fear-based identity to Christ-centered being. You were being prepared to live not as a struggling human, but as a transparency for the infinite way, as one through whom the presence may shine, speak, act, and bless. And if you look closely, you will notice something extraordinary. The moments you thought were breaking, you were actually remaking you. The moments you thought were endings were openings. What you believed was falling apart was, in truth, falling into place. For the spiritual path is never a path of abandonment, it is a path of unfolding. Never a path of isolation, it is a path of integration. Never a path of loss, it is a path of revelation. And now you begin to understand your entire life has been the preparation for this recognition that the kingdom of God is within you and has always been within you. You were never walking alone. You were being guided step by step, breath by breath, inner knowing by inner knowing. Every silence, every uncertainty, every shedding, every breakthrough, all of it brought you into alignment with the truth of your being. So, as we close, let this be your quiet realization. Nothing was taken from you. Only the unreal was removed. Nothing was withheld from you. Only the false was dissolved. Nothing was lost. Everything true remained and is now shining more clearly than ever. And now you stand at a new beginning, not because you have become something, but because you have ceased trying to be anything other than the expression of the one presence living itself through you. From this day forward, walk gently, walk calmly, walk inwardly, knowing that the same presence that carried you through the desert will carry you through every step ahead. You were never alone. You were being prepared, and now you are ready.